Coming back to looking back at childhood and things then for both of you, we're talking about you moving here and you obviously have family here as well. But Emma, you actually grew up in Surrey, didn't you? And I want to ask you about the fact you went to an all-girls school. What was it like? Was it like Mallory Towers?
No, I wish. My parents sent me to an all-girls school thinking that would be a good way to keep me on the straight and narrow.
It didn't
work.
No,
because we had a boys' school either side of our girls' school, so it really didn't work. But it did mean that I didn't necessarily wear loads of makeup to school like some of the co-ed schools do. And I have we had a very strong headmistress, a very strong female headmistress who instilled good skills in us, I think.
You both actually, because we do, one of the questions we ask our guests when we're talking about putting these shows together is whether or not they have anyone in their lives that were particularly inspiring. And you both mentioned some very strong women in your lives that had a big impact. I mean, you've just mentioned obviously in school, Emma, but also family-wise, you had some quite strong women, didn't you?
Yeah. So my mum is a fierce feminist. Very fierce feminist. In fact, she gets very upset the fact that I took John's name when we got married, and she thinks I was frowned upon for that.
You have to tell us your maiden name because it's beautiful.
My middle name, my mum's maiden name, is Flowerdew. So I am Emma Flowerdew Quirk, and our daughter is Gypsy May Flowerdew Quirk. So I have tried to acknowledge my mother in our naming, but she's a fierce feminist, always. And an environmentalist, and a lot of what I do is with her in mind. Would she be proud of that? Sometimes she is. And my stepmum, who I moved in with my dad and stepmum when I was 11, and she's just incredible. She's an amazing homemaker, cook, mother. She is probably the person I phone first whenever I need advice, particularly to do with the children, and she's always there.
And John, you also mentioned several women in your life who've been sort of had a big impact on you, but I really want you to tell the story for us about your nan and a bag of spuds.
Yeah, I think I was about 9 or 10, I think, and we ran a guest house at the top of Derby Road, and this was sort of late 70s, early 80s. And my nan was a big battle axe of a woman, Irish woman, and she was in the kitchen one day and she told me to go into the pantry and bring out the rest of the potatoes that were in the sack. So I walked into the pantry and my little boy arms couldn't shift the sack of potatoes at all. And I went out back to her and said, Nana, I can't lift it. And she said, you can, try again. So I went back and forth trying to lift this bag of potatoes and I couldn't. And in the end I sort of went out, I was really in tears. I said, well, Nan, I can't do it. And she sort of said, you can, think about it. And I sort of looked around, I thought, what am I going to do? And I saw a pot, an empty pot. And something just twigged. So I picked the pot up, went in, filled the pot with potatoes, brought it out to her, and she said, nice. So I carried on doing that, and eventually all the potatoes were out of the sack and on the table ready for her to cook them. And I sort of had a big smile on my face, and she said, see, John, there's no such word as can't. And that is probably the one bit of advice that stuck with me all through my life.
Do you think you'd have achieved what you had, especially with Litfest, if you hadn't had that sort of grounding?
No, I don't think so. I think because there were times early on, particularly when we were trying to put Litfest together, and it's a mammoth undertaking, and you need so much coordination and you need a lot of team behind you. And yeah, I think if there were times where I thought, is it really? Can I really do this? Is it really sort of worth it? Is it possible to do it? And yeah, I think that kind of ethos stood me in good stead, certainly for Litfest.